Hello and welcome to Middle East Matters. Coming up in this edition, a rift between Turkey's president and prime minister opens up over a controversial Twitter ban. Once a model to the region, now the worst city in the world. A new report issues a damning verdict on Baghdad. And urban acrobatics in Tehran as Iranian women fall in love with a craze that started here in France. We start with Twitter wars in Turkey, where President Gül and Prime Minister Erdogan are at odds over the microblogging site. This after the latter moved to shut it down in a bid to prevent the publication of revelations about his government, which is mired in a corruption scandal. The measure sparked an angry tweet from the president, a rare criticism of his longtime ally.
Facing thousands of supporters of his AKP party, the Prime Minister stood his ground. Since December, Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his entourage have been caught up in a corruption scandal. A few weeks ago, a phone directly linked to his son was tapped, the recordings posted on the internet. As a result, he decided to block Twitter.
They continue to attack. They continue to carry out unethical, immoral attacks. They say this or that will be made public. We'll release this and that. They tell lies after lies. They attack reputations, and they're using Twitter for this purpose.
But facing up to him, the Turkish president, Abdullah Gül, blasted the ban on Friday in a tweet. The following day, he went even further.
Only pages with illegal content, which break the law or condemn a citizen's personal life, can be restricted or removed. This is the legislation in force at the moment in Turkey. We cannot allow those who are trying to exploit this reality.
It's not the first time tempers have mounted between the two founding members of the AKP. Last June, during demonstrations in Taksim Square, the president called for restraint and dialogue, while the prime minister ordered a bloody security crackdown. Now, all eyes are on the presidential elections this summer. For months, there's been no doubt that Erdogan would run, but Gül's also gearing up as a candidate in the first Turkish presidential elections, in which the people, rather than the parliament, will vote for their president.
Even though Erdogan still enjoys strong popularity amongst the Turkish population, it's clear that his reputation's being tarnished. So Gül is looking to seize his prime minister's moment of weakness, to present himself as a balanced man who brings the people together and who would clearly be the best presidential candidate.
The Premier's gambling his political future on Sunday's municipal elections. According to results, he'll decide whether or not to run for president. For now, despite the corruption scandal and attacks on freedom of expression, polls suggest the AKP will hold on to the majority at around 40% of the vote.
Let's take a look now at some more stories that have been making headlines across the region, from Kuwait to Israel and Egypt. Here's a wrap of the top news by Aurora Dupuy.
Thousands of Egyptians protested after a court sentenced more than 500 people to death. After only 2 hearings, a judge ruled that the suspects were guilty of killing several police officers during the riots that followed the ouster of President Mohamed Morsi. The mass sentencing has sparked an international outcry.
The judge issued his verdict without any defence lawyers in attendance, and he sentenced all these people to death. This is not justice. Justice has been killed.
Divided over the crisis in Egypt, Arab leaders try to brush their differences aside to focus on Syria. At the Arab League summit in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia pointed the finger at the international community, blaming it for betraying the rebellion. The West is under increasing pressure to supply heavy weapons to the rebels. For the first time in 65 years, Israeli diplomats went on strike. Both at home and around the world, workers threw in the towel, demanding a pay rise and better working conditions.
We're striking because people of the finance ministry are trying to destroy the diplomatic service of the State of Israel, and we will do everything to avoid this.
As officials refuse to issue visas, it could affect world travellers, including Pope Francis, who's due to visit the Holy Land in May.
Next up, it used to be a model for the region. Now it's the worst city in the world. That's the verdict of a new report on Baghdad. Iraq's 1,250-year-old capital wears the scars of decades of conflict. with its power cuts, water shortages, checkpoints and persistent violence. This report on the daily struggles facing residents.
As recently as the 1970s, Baghdad was considered a model city in the Arab world. It was home to some of the region's best universities and museums. But today, after decades of conflict, it's ranked as one of the world's worst places to live. Based on factors including political stability, crime, and pollution, the Iraqi capital now comes behind Bangui and Port-au-Prince in a quality of life survey by the Mercer Consulting Group.
This news hurts all Iraqis because Baghdad is the city of civilization and history where students used to come and learn.
Residents of Baghdad today contend with daily violence. In February alone, 31 car bombs struck the capital. Security forces typically respond by setting up new checkpoints and restricting movements. Sectarian in nature, the violence has erased the harmony once enjoyed by a diverse population of Muslims, Christians, and Jews.
The situation is so awful and so very difficult. Living in Baghdad has become like living in a military barracks. You have to pass through 4 or 5 checkpoints when leaving your house to go to work.
Spider webs of electrical wires run along neighborhood streets as privately owned generators work to make up for the lack of national electricity grid. Poor drainage means that even moderate levels of rainfall lead to flooding. Officials say they are overstretched.
We at the City Council cannot cover all the needs of Baghdad City, in which about 8.5 million people are living.
With the population growth showing no signs of slowing down, Baghdad's fall from grace will take years to reverse.
Well, next to Iran and some surprising sights in the urban fabric of Tehran. This following the arrival of parkour, a kind of free running that involves negotiating a series of obstacles. Mixing acrobatics and gymnastics, it originated here in France back in the 1980s. Now, in the Iranian capital, women are throwing off social constraints to take part.
In this park in northern Tehran, a dozen girls meet every week. They stretch and warm up before the jumping starts. These women are part of Iran's parkour movement. In conservative Iran, where women's sports are usually practiced indoors, the group is a novelty.
We don't care what others say about us. Sometimes when we're exercising, they criticize us by saying that this sport is not for girls. Girls are supposed to knit or sew. They can't imagine that a girl can exercise just like a boy.
Popular in the West, parkour is an urban sport that involves running, jumping and climbing over obstacles with acrobatic body movements. That is no easy feat in a country which obliges women to wear loose clothing and cover their hair with a scarf.
I'm worried that my clothes move and show my body. I'm scared to lose my headscarf.
Despite the constraints, the girls are determined to do it and rise above gender stereotypes.
For many people, parkour is only for men, and they believe no woman can do it, especially free running. But our girls are proof that they can do it like boys, and sometimes they're even better.
They train up to 3 times a week, and each move is practiced to perfection. Here, the gym is well equipped to cushion their falls. The number of girls attending the parkour course keeps rising, and there are now nearly 300 women training in this gym.
We used to train in a park, and after a while we were given this room. The aim was for us to learn from others and also to teach them, so we could all progress. Then this course was formed. At first the number was limited, but little by little it grew. During summer, or the days when there are more students, this room is filled with girls.
For these girls, their dream is to practice their sport competitively on a national level.
That's just about it for now. We'll leave you with some images from Muscat, Oman's capital, playing host to its 8th International Film Festival. More than 100 works being showcased there, including 11 Omani shorts, 100 stars from some 30 countries in town, with the Golden Prize winner set to be announced on March the 29th. That's it for this edition of Middle East Matters. Do join us again soon.